Have you ever trusted someone with everything you had, only to have them stab you in the back in the most humiliating way possible, right in front of the people you love most? I'm talking about a betrayal so raw, so public, that it left me shaking with rage and questioning every bond one thought was unbreakable. That's exactly what happened to me last Thanksgiving when my older brother, the guy I looked up to my whole life, flat out refused to pay back a huge debt he owed me, laughing it off like it was nothing, while our entire family watched in stunned silence. The shame, the anger, the sheer disbelief. It hit me like a freight train, and I knew I couldn't let it slide. Not this time. This isn't just about money. It's about family, loyalty, and the gut-wrenching moment you realize someone you die for doesn't have your back. From the years of trust one poured into my brother to the explosive confrontation that changed how I see him forever, I'm spilling every messy, emotional detail of how I fought to make him answer for what he did. There's a twist in this story that flipped everything I thought I knew on its head, and now I'm left picking up the pieces of a relationship I'm not sure can be saved. Stick with me through this long, painful journey because I need to know what you'd do in my shoes. How far would you go to hold family accountable? And is forgiveness even possible after something like this? My name's Jake, and I'm 32 years old, living in the small, gritty industrial town of Erie, Pennsylvania, a place nestled on the southern shore of Lake Erie where the air always carries a faint metallic tang from the old factories and the winters are brutal, with snow piling up like it's trying to bury the past. Erie's a city of hard-working folks, with rusted-out shipyards along the waterfront, dive bars on every corner of State Street, and a lingering sense of faded glory from its heyday as a manufacturing hub. I've spent my whole life here, working as a mechanic at a garage called Rusty's Auto Repair just off Peach Street, where the smell of motor oil and burnt coffee is as familiar as my own heartbeat. It's a blue-collar life, long hours under car hoods, grease stains on my jeans, and Friday nights at the local diner with a burger and a beer, but it's mine, and I've always been proud of it. I grew up in a tight-knit family in a modest split-level house in the West Bayfront neighborhood, where the lake's icy wind would rattle the windows all winter long. My parents, Linda and Greg, were factory workers who taught me and my older brother, Ryan, the value of a dollar and the importance of sticking together no matter what. Ryan's 3 years older than me, and growing up, he was my hero. The guy who taught me how to throw a punch when bullies came around, who snuck me into R-rated movies at the old Tinseltown Theater, who always had my back no matter how deep I got into trouble. So when he came to me 5 years ago, desperate for help, I didn't hesitate to loan him $8,000, every penny of my savings, to get him out of a financial hole after a bad business deal. I trusted him completely, believed him when he swore he'd pay me back as soon as he got on his feet. But last Thanksgiving, in the middle of our family dinner with the smell of turkey and pumpkin pie still lingering in the air, he shattered that trust in a way I never saw coming, and it's left me reeling ever since. The emotional conflict that erupted inside me that day felt like a storm I couldn't escape, a mix of rage and heartbreak tearing through me as I sat at my parents' worn oak dining table, surrounded by the familiar creak of their old house and the distant hum of football on the living room TV. It was supposed to be a normal holiday. My mom's lumpy mashed potatoes, my dad's terrible dad jokes, my aunt and cousins crammed around the table with paper plates because we never had enough real ones. I'd been patient with Ryan for years, never pushing too hard about the money even though I'd had to delay fixing my truck and skip vacations to rebuild my savings. But I'd finally hit a breaking point. I needed that cash to cover a down payment on a fixer-upper house I'd been eyeing on East 6th Street, a chance to finally have something of my own. So, after a few glasses of cheap wine, I brought it up casually, figuring he'd at least acknowledge the debt in front of everyone. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, smirked, and said he didn't owe me a dime, that I'd gifted him the money and needed to stop whining about it. The room went dead quiet, forks clinking against plates the only sound, as I felt my face burn with humiliation. My own brother, the guy I'd idolized, was gaslighting me in front of our whole family, making me look like a petty fool for asking for what was mine. Anger surged through me, hot and sharp, making my hands clench under the table as I fought the urge to flip it over. But underneath that fury was a deeper pain, a hollow ache of betrayal that made my chest tight. How could he do this to me after everything we'd been through? Every memory of him as my protector felt like a lie now, and I couldn't shake the shame of being dismissed like I didn't matter, not just by him, but with everyone watching, their pitying looks burning into me. I felt small, exposed, like the foundation of our sibling bond had crumbled right there over a half-eaten slice of pie. Memories of our shared past haunted me in the weeks after that dinner, each one now tainted with doubt as I trudged through Erie's slushy streets, the gray sky mirroring my mood while the bitter lake wind cut through my jacket. I'd walk along the Presque Isle State Park trails on my days off, the frozen sand crunching under my boots, remembering how Ryan and I used to skip school as kids to fish off the pier, laughing as we reeled in nothing but old boots and seaweed. I'd always thought we were a team, unbreakable, but now I wondered if he'd ever really cared about me or if I'd just been a convenient backup plan. I drive past our old high school on Cherry Street, its brick facade crumbling just like my trust, thinking about the time he'd stood up for me when some seniors tried to jump me after a football game, his fists bruised but his grin wide as he told me he'd always have my six. Was that the same guy who'd humiliated me in front of our family? I'd sit in my tiny apartment above the garage, the radiator clanking as I nursed a beer, staring at old photos of us. Ryan's arm slung around my shoulder at my graduation, both of us in matching Steelers jerseys at a tailgate, and feel this bitter pang that those moments might mean nothing to him now. Erie itself felt different, heavier, with every familiar spot, the rusted swings at Frontier Park, the flickering neon of the diner where we'd split milkshakes, reminding me of a brotherhood I wasn't sure I still had. I'd work late at the garage, the hum of the lift and the clank of tools drowning out my thoughts, but I couldn't escape the gnawing question. Had I been blind to who Ryan really was all along, or had he changed into someone I didn't recognize? The anger festered as November turned to December, Erie's streets decked with half-hearted Christmas lights, while snow buried everything in a cold, suffocating blanket, mirroring the weight I carried every day. I couldn't let go of how Ryan had made me feel, like a nobody, like my struggles didn't matter, like years of loyalty were a joke to him. I'd see his truck parked outside the local bar, Brew Brothers, on State Street, and feel this urge to storm in and demand answers. But I held back, knowing I'd just lose it. I stopped going to family gatherings, dodging my mom's calls, ignoring texts from cousins asking if I was okay, because I couldn't face the pity or the awkward silence that would follow me like a shadow. I'd walk along the Erie waterfront at night, the lake a black void stretching into the darkness, the distant lights of cargo ships blinking like ghosts, and feel this burning resentment, not just at Ryan, but at myself for trusting him so completely, for not seeing the signs sooner. I'd replay that Thanksgiving moment over and over, his smug grin seared into my mind, wondering how I could have been so naive to think family meant the same thing to him as it did to me. I'd sit on my sagging couch, the TV flickering with some mindless game show, and stare at the stack of bills on my coffee table, knowing that $8,000 could have changed everything for me, could have been the start of a real future instead of this endless grind. Erie's bleak winter landscape, the boarded-up storefronts, the icy patches on every sidewalk, the relentless howl of the wind off the lake, felt like a reflection of the coldness growing inside me, a hardness I didn't want but couldn't shake. The unexpected twist came just after New Year's, when Erie was still locked in a deep freeze, and it turned my anger into something more complicated, a tangled mess of emotions I didn't know how to unravel. I'd been avoiding Ryan completely, working double shifts at the garage to keep my mind off him, my hands raw from wrenching bolts in the unheated shop. But one night, after a long day, I got a call from my mom, her voice shaky over the crackling line, asking me to come over because she had something important to tell me. I dragged myself to their house, the snow crunching under my tires as I pulled into the driveway, expecting another lecture about keeping the peace. Instead, she sat me down at the kitchen table, the same one where Ryan had humiliated me, and handed me a crumpled envelope with my name scrawled on it in his messy handwriting. Inside was a letter, dated a week after Thanksgiving, where Ryan admitted he'd been lying about the money, not because he didn't know it, but because he'd lost everything in a gambling spiral he'd hidden from everyone, including his wife and 2 kids. He wrote that he'd laughed it off at dinner because he was ashamed, too proud to admit he was broke, too scared to face the family's judgment. He'd been trying to scrape together the cash to pay me back, taking odd jobs under the table, but he was drowning in debt to people far scarier than me. My mom told me he hadn't wanted her to show me the letter, but she couldn't stand seeing us torn apart. As I sat there, the kitchen clock ticking too loudly, the smell of her burnt coffee lingering, I felt my anger crack open, revealing a raw, aching sadness underneath. My brother wasn't just a jerk. He was broken, trapped in a mess I hadn't seen, and his betrayal came from a place of desperation, not malice. But that didn't erase the hurt, the public humiliation, the years of waiting for a promise he couldn't keep. I drove home that night, the streets slick with black ice, feeling more lost than ever, torn between pity for Ryan's struggle and the lingering sting of how he'd treated me, unsure if I could forgive him or if I even wanted to try. That letter forced me to confront how I'd handle this fractured relationship, and I spent the next few weeks wrestling with my next move while Erie's winter dragged on. The lake effect, snow piling up outside my window like the weight of my indecision. I didn't reach out to Ryan right away. I wasn't ready, still too raw from the betrayal, still too angry at how he'd chosen to handle his shame. Instead, I threw myself into work, spending long hours at the garage, the cold seeping into my bones as I rebuilt engines and patched tires, trying to find clarity in the rhythm of manual labor. I'd walk to the diner on my lunch breaks, sitting at the cracked vinyl counter with a cup of bitter coffee, staring out at the snow-covered parking lot, wondering if I owed Ryan a chance to explain or if I owed myself the right to walk away. I started journaling in a beat-up notebook I kept in my toolbox, scribbling down my thoughts late at night in my freezing apartment, the radiator hissing as I tried to sort through the mess of anger, guilt, and reluctant empathy swirling inside me. I'd drive out to Presque Isle on weekends, parking near the lighthouse and watching the frozen waves crash against the shore, the icy spray stinging my face, thinking about how family ties are supposed to be unbreakable but feel so fragile now. I dug through old memories, remembering the times Ryan had been there for me, helping me fix my first car, a junker Chevy, in our dad's driveway, staying up all night with me when my high school girlfriend dumped me, and wondered if those moments could outweigh the hurt he'd caused. Erie's stark, frozen beauty, the skeletal trees along the bayfront, the ghostly outline of abandoned piers in the distance, mirrored my inner conflict, a cold, quiet struggle to decide if I could rebuild trust with someone who'd shattered it so publicly. Making Ryan answer for what he'd done wasn't as simple as I'd thought it would be, and as January turned to February, I took steps to confront the issue head-on, even as I battled my own doubts in a town that felt both comforting and claustrophobic with its endless reminders of our shared history. I finally called him, leaving a short voicemail saying we needed to talk, my voice tight as I stood in my kitchen, the hum of the fridge the only sound after I hung up. He didn't call back right away, and I didn't push, instead focusing on small ways to reclaim my own stability. I started fixing up my apartment, patching the peeling paint on the walls, replacing a busted lamp with one I found at a thrift store on West 26th, as if putting my space in order could do the same for my head. I'd walk through Erie's Glenwood neighborhood on quiet evenings, past houses with sagging porches and flickering porch lights, thinking about how much of my life had been tied to Ryan's shadow, how I'd always looked to him for guidance, and how I needed to stand on my own now, debt or no debt. I'd stop by the Erie Maritime Museum on the waterfront, staring at the old brig Niagara dock there, its weathered hull a testament to surviving storms, wondering if my relationship with Ryan could weather this one. I kept working toward that house down payment, picking up extra hours, my hands aching from overtime, determined not to let his mess derail my dreams completely. But every step forward came with a glance back. Every time I passed the bar where he hung out, every time I saw a truck like his on the road, I felt that pull to resolve this, to either mend what was broken or cut it loose for good. Reflecting on our past became a near-daily ritual as I tried to piece together where we'd gone wrong. Erie's bleak winter landscape, a constant backdrop to my spiraling thoughts. I'd sit on the icy benches at Liberty Park, watching kids sled down the hill while their laughter echoed through the frosty air, remembering how Ryan and I used to do the same, racing on cheap plastic sleds until we were soaked and shivering, our mom yelling at us to come in for hot cocoa. I thought about the summer we'd worked together at a construction site off I-79, hauling lumber under a brutal sun, him blasting classic rock from a beat-up boombox while we swapped dumb stories about girls and dreams of getting out of Erie someday. I drive past the old factory where our dad worked, its smokestacks dormant now, and recall how Ryan had promised to help me start my own garage one day, a pipe dream we'd sketched out over beers at the kitchen table. Those memories clashed so hard with the image of him smirking at Thanksgiving, dismissing me like I was nothing, and I couldn't tell if I was mourning the brother I thought I had or the future we'd never built. I'd wander into the diner late at night, the jukebox playing scratchy Springsteen tunes, and stare at the faded photos on the wall of Erie's glory days, wondering if our family's best days were behind us too. The more I reflected, the more I realized how much of my identity had been wrapped up in being Ryan's little brother, and I didn't know who I'd be if I let that go, or if I even wanted to. As the weeks dragged on, I built a shaky new normal, though the unresolved tension with Ryan hung over me like Erie's ever-present lake effect clouds, threatening to dump more snow on a life already buried under too much weight. I hadn't heard back from him after that voicemail, and I didn't push, focusing instead on small victories, saving a little more each paycheck, getting a decent review from my boss at the garage, even joining a local rec league for basketball at the YMCA on East 10th, where the squeak of sneakers on the court drowned out my overthinking for a few hours a week. I'd walk along the bayfront promenade on clearer days, the lake a steely gray under a weak sun, feeling a cautious sense of control over my own path, even if the family piece was still a jagged hole. I started hanging out more with coworkers, grabbing wings at Sloppy Duck after shifts, their easy banter about sports and dumb garage stories a welcome distraction from the heavier stuff. But I'd still catch myself staring at my phone, waiting for Ryan to call, or driving past his street on my way home, the glow of his living room window a silent question mark. I'd sit in my truck outside my parents' house sometimes, engine idling, debating whether to go in and ask my mom for more details about his gambling mess. But I always chickened out, not ready for whatever truth might come with it. Erie's slow thaw as March approached, the melting slush revealing cracked sidewalks, the first hints of green on bare trees, felt like a metaphor for my own hesitant healing, but I knew I couldn't move forward fully until I faced him, one way or another. Now, as I sit here in my dimly lit apartment, the distant rumble of a train passing through Erie's industrial heart cutting through the quiet, the lingering smell of motor oil on my hands even after a shower, I'm still wrestling with what to do next. I made Ryan answer for it in a way, by getting that letter, by knowing the truth behind his actions. But it's not enough, not yet. I'm torn between wanting to sit down with him, to hear his side straight from him, maybe even help him out of this hole if I can, and wanting to protect myself from more hurt, to draw a line and say I'm done being the one who always gives. I keep thinking about that house I want to buy, the life I'm trying to build, and whether dragging this out with Ryan will hold me back or set me free. I've got his number pulled up on my phone right now, my thumb hovering over call, but I don't know if I've got the guts to press it, or if I should just